the General Assembly, one of the shared values had 2 words: pluralism, diversity. Now, you might note that the one I have up here now is in color and a little nicer than the one I took a picture of. That's because I know the woman is the chair of the study commission. And I had hoped that they had more of the covenants written. And so earlier, when I was working with the sermon, I wrote to her and said, if you have them, would you send them to me if you have the draft? She said, oh, we're finishing them up now, and we're going to be ready to send them to the board next week, but I'll put you on the list to send a copy to. So thank you. She said, meanwhile, though, I'll share with you the picture we have, which is better than the one they could put up at the General Assembly, of our draft of new shared values. So there's one of them with 2 words. Now, I don't know if they couldn't decide which would be better to call this, or if they just knew that one was so closely tied to the other that they needed to list them together. So it's pluralism / diversity. But it provided a challenge to me in determining how to approach this topic. First thing I attempted to do, both by reading UU materials and others, was determine what they meant by these topics. Pluralism, especially, means different things depending on the field of study. Most UU-related materials that I found that were related to pluralism, I pulled that up, and UU, you can do all that now in Google and find out what has both UU and pluralism. Most UU materials related to pluralism were focused on our long-held value of religious pluralism. And I'll have more to say about religious pluralism a little bit later. But for this exploration, I needed a wider understanding. So looking at the various definitions of pluralism, I surmise that the one that probably matches the intentions of the study commission is the kind of pluralism described by Wikipedia as a kind of political philosophy. Here's that description. Pluralism as a political philosophy is the recognition and affirmation of diversity within a political body, which is seen to permit the peaceful coexistence of differing interests, convictions, and lifestyles. While not all political pluralists advocate for a pluralist democracy, this is the most common, as democracy is often viewed as the most fair and effective way to moderate between the discrete values. As put by arch pluralist Isaiah Berlin, he said, let us have the courage of our admitted ignorance, of our doubts and uncertainties. At least we can try to discover what others require by making it possible for ourselves to know others as they truly are, by listening to them carefully and sympathetically, and understanding them and their lives and their needs, end quote. Pluralism thus tries to encourage members of a society to accommodate their differences by avoiding extremism, which is adhering solely to only one value, or at the very least refusing to recognize others as legitimate, and engaging in good faith dialogue. Pluralists also seek the construction or reform of social institutions in order to reflect and balance competing principles. Indeed, our founding fathers, and I do say that because that's what they were, fathers, all men. Our founding fathers, might have been some good women behind them telling them what to say, but they're the ones that wrote it down. Our founding fathers attempted to emphasize the need for enhancing pluralism in our young nation. I became interested in the Federalist Papers after listening to the characters sing about them in the musical Hamilton. These are a series of 85 essays written by Alexander Hamilton, John Jay, and James Madison between October 1787 and May 1788. One of the most famous arguments for institutional pluralism came from James Madison in the Federalist Paper number 10. Madison feared that factionalism would lead to infighting in the new American Republic and votes this paper to questioning how best to avoid such an occurrence. He posits that to avoid factionalism, it is best to allow many competing factions advocating different primary principles to prevent any one from dominating the political system. Pluralism is connected with the hope that this process of conflict and dialogue will result in at least quasi-common good. The common good was not an abstract value or set in stone. However, it was an attempt at balancing competing social interests and will thus constantly shift. It will shift as social conditions shift. It will evolve, as one of our other values we explored a couple of weeks ago talked about. It will evolve. For pluralism to function and to be successful in defining the common good, all groups have to agree to a minimal consensus that shared values are at least worth pursuing. The most important baseline value is thus that of mutual respect, understanding, or tolerance. If no such dialogue is possible, extremism and physical coercion are likely inevitable. And sadly, with extremists who refuse to focus on the common good, especially if it annoys their leader, Donald Trump, our nation finds itself unable to move forward on many fronts. Now, I'm not saying they're not extremists who are unbending on the left, but they are minuscule in comparison. That political examination of pluralism can be, I think, an example for organizational and institutional pluralism as well, like in UU or like in this congregation. We value that we have differing ideologies, cultures, diets, spiritual practices, and more. Can we honor those differences and find ways that we can move together for the common good, even with our differences? Today, I want especially to examine a little more closely the religious pluralism that we as Unitarian Universalists are especially known for. Let me begin with a reading by Forrest Church from the Cathedral of the World. And you'll have to, I don't have this written up here, so you have to listen closely as he describes metaphorically what we honor as a part of our faith. Welcome to the Cathedral of the World. Above all else, contemplate the windows. In the Cathedral of the World, there are many windows without number, some long forgotten, covered with patinas of dust. Others revered by millions, the most sacred of shrines. Each in its own way is beautiful. Some are abstract, others representational, some dark and meditative, others bright and dazzling. Each window tells a story about the creation of the world, the meaning of history, the purpose of life, the nature of humankind, the mystery of death. The windows of the cathedral are where the light comes in. Where the light comes in. As with all extended metaphors, this one is imperfect. The light of God, and remember his definition, God is not God's name, but our name for that which is greater than all and yet present in each. That light not only shines down upon us, but also from within us. Together with the windows, the darkness and the light, we are a part of the cathedral, not a part from it. Together we comprise an interdependent web of being. If the cathedral is built out of star stuff, so are we. But we are that part, that known part, that contemplates the meaning of the whole. Because the cathedral is so vast and our time so short, our vision so dim, we are able to contemplate only a tiny part of the cathedral, explore a few apses, reflect upon the play of the darkness and light through a few of its windows. Yet since the whole, holographically, organically, is contained in each of the parts, as we ponder and act upon the insight from our ruminations, we may discover meanings that give coherence and meaning both to it and to us. This, he says, is universalism. End quote. Each religion, each spiritual path or philosophical understanding is a window that lets the light in. It's the same light, but the various windows seem to provide a very different understandings and meaning for people. Some of us find greater meaning for our lives by focusing on a particular window. And if that helps you to live a better life and make a better life for others, that's a marvelous window for you. You can explore that window all your life. And there are others, probably like many of us, if you use, who prefer to explore many windows. And that is good as well. And some may prefer to close their eyes, breathe deeply, and let the light from within them nourish them. And that too is good. We, Unitarian Universalists, embraced religious pluralism a long time ago. Long ago. Historically, Unitarian theology differed from traditional Christian theology on several important points, but it wasn't until 1819 in New England that a minister named William Ellery Channing set Unitarianism on a path which would come to be defined in large part by how we value religious pluralism. These ideas were put forth in his most famous sermon entitled Unitarian Christianity, in which he claimed the Unitarian name that folks have been pointing their fingers at and said, oh, you all, you progressive, you're just a bunch of Unitarians. It was put down. You're like those people over and you're a bunch of Unitarians. Channing claimed the label and explained his evolving views. Now, Channing was a member of that transcendental club of New Englanders who began to find meaning not only in religious texts and many religious texts, but also in their own transcendental experiences. And we know who some of those are: Ralph Waldo Emerson, Henry David Thoreau, Theodore Parker, Margaret Bull, Elizabeth Peabody, and others. We claim them as our Unitarian ancestry. The churches of the standing order in New England began to split along those lines. There's a whole lot of history in that, of how that came about, that I'll share another time. And ministers who claimed the name Unitarian formed their own association in 1925. But our Universalist parentage, we have Unitarian Universalists. Our Universalist parentage was also more gradually opening up to finding wisdom in many religions and philosophical traditions as well. Therefore, when these two merged in 1961, they determined not to proclaim any religious creed. They can even agree within their own selves, but let's try to come together one together. So they said, we just won't have one, any religious creed, and welcome all kinds of religious texts and other sources as being inspiring. Though both Unitarians and Universalists began as Christian denominations, they have evolved beyond that and have continued to evolve. Some people ask me how in the world it's possible to minister to folks who have so many differing beliefs and spiritual paths. I share that it makes for a very interesting ministry for someone like myself. And I'm so flexible in my own ways of participating with various spiritual practices and more that I just dance with the differences. One place that is particularly a challenge for some folks is providing pastoral care, especially when folks have lost loved ones or nearing the end of their own lives. When I was doing my chaplaincy training in Northwest Hospital in Atlanta, they would often assign me to the folks who were not Christians because many of the others had difficulty meeting their needs. They were trained to do this, but they still had a hard time being able to meet their needs and not trying to save them at the same time. When I'm in situations like this, I ride in the patient's or the family's theological car. just get in the car with them. And I minister to them within that, using their vehicle. I can pray with them, chant with them, read scripture to them, sing with them, or just hold their hand and listen. I am not there to judge that person's beliefs, but to find ways to comfort them within their own beliefs. We are Unitarian Universalists. We value pluralism. Now, what about that other word put forth by the study commission, diversity? That seems a little simpler to understand. Wherever you work, they probably have a diversity, equity, and inclusion committee or something looking at various kinds of things, you know, diversity, lift up diversity. Some of them are sincere about it, and others, it's just another committee that's supposed to do whatever they say from the regent's office. That does seem a little simpler to understand. We value diversity as Unitarian Universalists. In fact, we become bored easily if we're too much alike. And it's a good thing we value diversity. Even in this little small congregation, we have members and friends who are very different in many ways. I'm going to ask you to either say Mickey softly or just lift your finger in front of you as an acknowledgement if you share this menagerie of differences. And sometimes you have to lift it more than once because you go in more than one category if you want to. In our small congregation, we have members and friends who identify as white, identify as a person of color, identify as straight, bisexual, gay, lesbian, queer, cisgender, trans, non-binary. And we used to have a college student who identified as asexual. We may still have some of them. I don't know about that, but the others, I know people that come out would identify in all those categories. Perhaps someone still does, but I don't know about them yet. And we tend to eat differently. Some of us are vegan, vegetarian, pescatarian. You just have fish and vegetables and seafood. Omnivorous, you eat the plants and the animals. I don't think we have any that are totally carnivorous. Gluten-free, lactose-free, low sodium. In our congregation, we have people who are at least temporarily able-bodied and people with one or more disabilities. And we have people who live with mental health diagnoses, people who live sober lives, and people who imbibe. In our small congregation, we have people who are financially insecure, people who can get by okay financially, and people who have plenty and then some. We have people who are single, married, people who are divorced, and people who are widowed. In our small congregation, we have people who are parents to humans, people who are children, no matter your age, people who are grandparents or great-grandparents, people who are parents to furry creatures, people who live with others, people who live alone. In our small congregation, we have people who identify as Buddhist, Christian, Jewish, atheist, agnostic, humanist, naturalist, pagan, Wicca, Unitarian Universalist, those who follow specific religious paths like A Course on Miracles, and none of the above, and possibly even all of the above, depending on the day of the week. We are different folks. We are very different. Hallelujah. But we do recognize that even with our differences, we are probably more alike than we are different. That's what the little children's lesson was saying too. We are probably more alike than we are different. Raise your finger if you've ever fallen in love. Have you ever had your heart broken? Have you ever grieved the loss of a loved one? Have you ever experienced anger, joy, humiliation, sorrow? Do you have regrets? Do you have dreams? Do you sometimes experience despair? Do you have hope? Do you want the world to be better for the next generation? Do you yearn for connection? Do you love to love and be loved? Me too. We have so many ways we are alike. So many ways we can work together for the common good, even with all of our differences. I'm going to close with these words written by poet and human being extraordinaire, Maya Angelou, titled The Human Family. She says, I note the obvious differences in the human family. Some of us are serious, some thrive on comedy, and some declare their lives are lived as true profundity, and others claim they really live the real reality. The variety of our skin tones can confuse, bemuse, delight. Brown and pink and beige and purple, tan and blue and white. I've sailed upon the 7 seas and stopped in every land. I've seen the wonders of the world, not yet one common man. I know 10,000 women called Jane and Mary Jane, but I've not seen any two who are really the same. Mirror twins are different, although their features jibe, and lovers think quite different thoughts while lying side by side. We love and lose in China, we weep on England's moors, and laugh and moan in Guinea, and thrive on Spanish shores. We seek success in Finland, are born and die in Maine. In minor ways, we differ. In major, we're the same. I know the obvious differences between each sort and type, but we are more alike, my friends, than we are unlike. We are more alike, my friends, than we are unlike. We are more alike, my friends, than we are unlike. Amen. Blessed be. If someone will come